All right, so I will call to order the meeting of Cohasset Advisory Committee for Wednesday, April 24th, 2024 at 7:04 p.m. And we will have a roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Here.
Mark Cameron.
Here.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm here. I had to find that mute button, but I'm here.
Fran Collins,
Present.
Robert Hillman,
I'm here.
Mark and Diane are not here. Diane is coming though. Mary McGoldrick.
Here.
No Meg Wheeler yet? No, okay, and Gina Stino here. Okay, so the first item on the agenda, I would like to move a little bit because Rob would like a standing ovation for,
I was being sardonic.
I know what you were being.
I was going to give you one anyway for,
Yeah,
that's
that's
really, you just miss being chair and doing all that other work.
anyway, okay, so we need to vote the budget recommendations on the police, fire, and DPW budgets that we reviewed at the last meeting. Does anybody have any questions before I request that? No? Okay. So the first item is police. And could I have a motion to recommend to town meeting the budget for the police department?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay, and then could I have a motion to approve the fire department budget that was presented at the,
So moved.
okay, so that's Fran, and do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. And then last but not least is the DPW. Do I have a motion to recommend their budget to town meeting?
So moved.
Second.
So that's Mary and Fran. And roll call vote, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy.
Oh, dear.
Oops, sorry. Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler. She's not here either, and Gina Stino. Sorry, I have a list so that I get you all in alphabetical order. Okay, so that one passed also. So next is review and vote articles, with the first one being Article 4, the operating budget. And has everybody had a chance to look it over? I have too many papers here, sorry.
I also share, so you all got the line item for all the fun that is, and
Right,
sent you a summary one pager on the two biggest expenses in the shared budget, which is pension. and
Right.
Care. If anyone has any questions on those, otherwise, I mean, if you want to get into the weeds on any of them, you're welcome to. I also sent a updated version of the overall numbers, which are with the contracts in the going to the third year next year with a 3% base, had to squeeze the budget a little bit to get to a little bit more than 4% revenue increase flowing into the budgets to make everything work for the schools in particular, but for the town side as well. So with those tweaks, and because we saved we had a lower increase, thankfully, in pension and healthcare. We were able to get to that number, which schools come in, and well, you're going to be hearing from them separately anyway, I think, but they're okay with the absence of something I'll talk about a little bit later, and with the special education gap, which I'm recommending be filled. And then on the town side, again, this areas that are tight, I had to go back and squeeze all the budgets a little bit further. I know that Bill Quigley would like more money in police overtime. I know that John Docker would like more money in fire overtime. We might even need more money in legal, but I can't, you know, at the risk of having to lay people off or squeeze services tighter, we're not going to do any of those things at this point. That said, I think we're okay. I think we actually going to have a pretty good revenue year this year. We should have a good one next year. So I think we'll be okay for going into 26. I know I'm looking a year ahead. And then we'll just, you know, we'll play it by year. You know, again, this year we're going into 25 is the last year of the contract. So we'll be negotiating new contracts. And there's going to be a lot of discussions next year about what 26 looks like anyway. So did you have a question for me, Mary?
Yeah, but and it may not be the right time to ask it, so just let me know that. But I'm most interested in you know, the efforts that you made to get that $342,000 and change to fill that gap for the school special education fund, and what that might have taken money away from. But that may be a conversation for later on. That's,
I mean, I don't think all kind of integrate. So it's, I guess, probably just if you're okay with me describing that, Gene, I'm happy to answer it now. So the goal was not to have a takeaway from anything. So what the schools are faced with is a double-edged sword, and I know that both of you understand this.
yeah, we're aware. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's new, highly expensive, specific needs, and then a double-digit increase in some base costs that are facing everybody in the region, because some of these specialized services just went up by a lot. So Cohasset is facing a deficit. The school department's having troubles this year. They're coming to the select board for money from the special ed stabilization fund in a couple of weeks to try to plug this year's gap. They've applied for there's like special money that they can apply for, like emergency, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on what it's called, circuit breaker money, for this year and for next year. So right now, so I think they're going to be able to make this year okay with the money that they're going to seek from the special ed stabilization fund. Now next year, it's not a surprise anymore, so you can't go back to the special education stabilization fund. That said, the worst case scenario number is what's in the free cash number. It's $342,399. That's a lot of money, and there's no way to fill that without cutting into other parts of the school budget. And I'm not recommending doing that. I don't think it's a good idea. And we have the ability to cover it. Now that's a worst case scenario number. It could come down. The schools will know, I think, better in May if they're getting some of this extra money for this year and for next year. And some of the tuitions, as I think, if Gene and Mary know in particular, some of them can vary, they're not always locked in stone. I mean, it does depend on, individual evaluations and how things play out. And that said, we need to have the money for the worst case scenario. So that's what it is. So that'll be set aside in an article. The recommendation is that it's set aside. And if they need it, they'll take it. And if they don't, then they won't. And it'll just revert back, whatever's left over will revert back to free cash for the following year. At the same time, it's going to be, if these numbers are going to be stuck in there for any length of time, they're going to have to work over the next year to figure out how to make it work. And we will have those conversations. That said, they did strip really every extra ask out of their operating budget. There's really nothing else in, typically, there's always a wish list. Oh, we want, if we could have a Chinese French teacher, and we wanted to do modern art. I'm being, excessive here, right? But there's legitimate requests, right? This year they pulled all of those out, and they squeezed, and they also didn't see, they were projecting what they thought was going to be a much larger increase in the Chapter 70 money, because we went to full day kindergarten, so the kids all count for full students as opposed to half students. It didn't materialize, and not to the extent that they thought. So that said, all of that worked out. So all of our operating budget is under control now with the projections. It's that special education piece is the only one that's still left. And again, with free cash, it's not hurting anything else. It's extra money we have, and it buys us a little time to figure out. Did someone disappear?
Mark has been going in and out, so, but,
Okay. All right.
okay, no, I mean, I've been following the meetings. I think Mark has too.
I'm here too. Okay, let me promote Diane. So,
So no, and they've definitely been, I know even a month or so ago, or maybe longer than that, they were talking about a spending freeze, which I don't know if they instituted or not. So I was more interested in just how that allocation was impacting any other part of the budget.
No, because we had about $980,000 of free cash left coming into this cycle. I thought that was the best place to go first. And again, we went back and forth. We had multiple meetings there. Susan and Dr. Sullivan and myself and our finance team met a couple of times to go over this. Lance Stile, the school committee chair, was involved. We had a lot of conversations, and and they kept drilling down, and I kept drilling down, and we got to a point where we could make the operating budget work. And then that last piece of special education. And again, the hope is they won't need it all, but if they do, it's there. But if they don't, then again, it'll just flow back into free cash in the following year for something else, or it can be repurposed at town meeting for something else if needed. So,
Okay, thank you.
Mark's had his hand up for a bit, so I was going to add something, but you can go first, Mark.
Mike.
Mike, sorry.
Mike.
Mike, too many M's.
Chris, just a quick question. In your comments, you referenced strong revenues, and I guess my question is are there revenues, maybe say like building permits, for instance, that are cyclical in nature, and then just as we plan ahead to subsequent years, might not necessarily be able to count on them? So just curious, how that outlook seems to you right now.
Right. So yes, there are cyclical revenues, but I try not to budget for those. Right. So we use those as kind of bonus revenues because I can't, we had a spike in building revenues because of some major projects. Now, those aren't going to stay that way. However, the new growth is so I do use new growth. So what happens once new growth comes in, it never goes away. So it becomes a new baseline. So the good news is that so we are able to use the new growth revenue, and because the number that we're going to be able to use for next year is over $800,000, and we're only budgeting like $550. So we had a nice big jump in that, and that's going to be there forever. So that's the kind of permanent revenue I prefer to use for long-term expenses. We did have a spike in building revenues, and we never reflected it in the budget because it's not real. Now, the underlying building revenue has gone up because we've changed our fee structure to match some of our neighbors, and we're much more aggressive than I should say Inspector Hallen and his team are much more aggressive in tracking the expenses. So we're getting better revenue. So the floors come up, which is good, but I have never gone to the ceiling. That said, we are using the new growth, and again, the assessor's not promising me anything, but you can just look around town, right? There's still a lot of construction going on. In particular, the condominium complex at the harbor, it was only partially covered. It's going to get fully captured this year for next year, we think, or a large chunk of it. So the expectation is next year's new growth numbers which will help 26 will also be pretty strong. So I think we'll be okay. As I say that those things aren't going to happen forever. There's only so much land to redevelop, and there's nothing in the pipeline of that magnitude anywhere. So we're going to probably flatten back down to a number probably around 550, because again, the floors come up, because when people put new growth on their homes now, it's pretty substantial. I remain amazed, as do the assessors, as to the extensions that people are putting on their homes. But so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. Thanks.
Diane?
Yeah, Chris, I came in late and I apologize, but so I might have missed, are we using for the special ed deficit? Are we using any of the money from the trust, the special ed trust?
Not for next year. For this year, yes. But they still have a hole for this year, and they have a hole for next year. So for this year they can, but for next year it's not unexpected anymore. So they really can't use that fund. So that plug of free cash will help them. That's the number that's in there, that 342. I want to say it's 342, 399. I don't have it right in front of me. Is their maximum number they're looking at as a gap? The hope is it'll come in less, because they're seeking extra special money for circuit breaker from the state, which a lot of other people are too, but the state is looking to fund. And again, they're kind of work hard at seeing some of the placements, are not always locked in exactly. So we'll see how that plays out. And again, we never know the exact specifics, so we shouldn't. It's just, it's the overall numbers. So that should get us through next year. And again, if there's money that gets turned back, all to the better. But this way they're covered, and they know they're covered. And they did squeeze. I don't know if you heard that part of it, Diane. They've cut they typically, they add a lot of extras, which is not a bad conversation, but they're all out. Everything came out. There's no extra in that budget at all this year. And we were able to, I had to tweak, again, we had a little bit of revenue. Mike was just asking about the revenue. So the new growth that we had from last year that flows into this, I should say this year, that flows into next year. Because we don't have a budget for this year. Of like a $250,000+ plus the fact that our Maya number came in good, and we actually did a bottom-up look at our healthcare, so we were able to squeeze that a little bit. And we also did a hard look at our pension, but again, the numbers there are really good. So our numbers only went up a little bit this year. So we had cushion in both of those. So we're able to put a little more revenue down into both the school and town operating budgets because we're coming into the third year of a contract. 3% is the base increase, which is something we're actually on the low end by some of the other municipalities. So we'll be okay. I'm comfortably okay in 25, and I think we'll be okay in 26. That said, we have the contract negotiations coming up, so that's another day's conversation.
Right, and to revisit the special education monies, the facilities that we send our students out to have a capped amount of a percentage point that they can go up each year, but they're dealing with the same issues that we are. Costs are up on everything, supplies, salaries, healthcare, all of it. So, there's very little wiggle room in that part of the budget because we're mandated by law to provide services to children who need them. So we'll have to just keep a watch on that. And the school committee is coming next week to our next meeting. So we can have a fuller conversation on all of this when they come.
And not that I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, just for reference, I'm chair of the board of a school that some of our students may or may not go to for outplacement. And every 3 years, there's something called reconstruction that they do. And those rates went up 14%.
Yeah.
For very necessary reasons, but you can see both sides of that equation. It's really tough for everybody right now. So you just need to keep that in mind. And those rates do change every 3 years.
So we just got caught in a bad cycle is what happened.
Yeah.
And again, that's the point we'll take. No one's criticizing the rates. It's just that they hit everyone at the same time. This is a conversation that's an ongoing one. So, and again, I don't want to digress to this too much, but I've talked to Maya a little bit, or MMA, Maya as part of MMA. That's the Interlocal Insurance Association we're all part of. And they've, over the recent years, have done things like they come at the unemployment insurance area and a few other things that are saving us money. So we're actually using them for that. We're using them from some other things. So I've raised the issue of special ed as well. I said, look, the problem with that is that it's kind of like an injured on duty claim, right? You have to pay it. It doesn't matter. And they come out of nowhere. Is it insurable? So they're actually exploring whether that's insurable. I'm not sure it's going to be in an economic way, but we're not the only community who's facing this. So because I sit on an advisory group, I raise it when they've said they're going to look into it. Doesn't mean they're going to do anything. They're going to be able to do anything about it. But the state's surely not doing anything about it, except they're giving us money. So again, wherever we have an opportunity, we're just seeking alternative ways. Because again, it's a system that needs to exist. There just has to be a better way of funding it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Because a lot of these things come out of nowhere, right? People can move, and all of a sudden you have something you didn't expect. I mean, that's the single biggest challenge with this is it's very variable sometimes. But to go back to the budget, I think we're okay. We've had a lot of good conversations, and I think we're okay. So.
Okay. Do we think that we're ready to take a vote on recommending the budget, or do you think that we should revisit that next week? Chris.
Well, if you want to vote on the municipal side, and the shared side, I'll be more than happy to have you do that. And then when you hear the schools, you've done it. You're doing it a little bit differently than you have in some past years by voting on the chunks you've seen. If you're okay with voting on the municipal side and the shared side, which is what you all have now, right? And we've talked about, I think, at length. That's fine, and that means the only vote you still have left is on the school side, and then it'll be one big fat budget at that point. By the way, water and sewer. You still need to see water.
I was going to say we still have water and sewer, so maybe we should wait until next week.
Well, the only thing is that this is not fresh in your mind, right? So if you voted it now, it's done, right? and then
Yeah,
you
but
can
it's
come back
only
to
a
the
week in
others.
between. It's not
Right.
like it's 2 or 3. What's the consensus of everyone here?
I just think they all go together. So if we're
Yeah.
gonna vote the budget, we want to vote it in its totality. You know, because if something comes up with the schools next week that has to move something around on the municipal side, we might be back to, revoting the municipal side. So I would vote for waiting till we have the whole thing before us.
Yeah, right. Makes sense.
And I would not disagree. I think that that's probably a wiser choice. I mean, Diane?
And I did look at next week's agenda, but I forget. Are we gonna hear capital budget next week?
Let me just
That's-
grab.
that's-
Anyway,
that's-
again, I think it's just all part and parcel of the
That's
bigger
the plan.
picture.
They're voting, they're doing tomorrow.
No,
Yeah, they're not ready for us yet.
They're wrapping tomorrow, so they should be ready for next week, Diane. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's cool, and water and sewer should be ready too. I mean, it's been a little bit delayed with them this year for a variety of reasons, but their budgets I think are okay too, from what I've seen, so.
next week is school budget, water and sewer,
Yes,
and the zoning articles.
and then capital,
and
capital,
CPC.
They're not on the agenda.
They will be.
Okay.
Uh, Hopefully.
okay. All right, so we'll move on and we'll hold that for next week.
All right.
So Article 5 would be next. That's unpaid bills.
Unpaid bills,
As of now, there's none. So, I mean, I just assume wait it out another week or to make sure there's nothing. But at this point, there isn't any. So there won't really be a vote. It'll just be a recommendation and that's why postponed if we don't have anything. If we don't have anything for the warrant. So, but at this point, there's nothing to present, which is good. The next one is a supplemental appropriations. There were 2 in the memo that I gave you, and there's actually a third edition that I apologize I missed. And that's an annual, that's a regular one we do. The 2 that are in my memo, if you give me a second, trying to open it. My computer's very slow. The 2 that I gave you were the police overtime and legal expenses. The police OT is, again, I think you'll have this. I won't put this up on the screen unless you want me to. There's been an unexpected retirement. There's been a recent unexpected transfer. There's been some people out. It's been a tight year, and I think you've already heard Chief Quigley talk about when he came to present. Next year, there's money in the budget to add another police officer, which will help with this. We actually do have now 2. We just hired someone from Nantucket. Actually, he's a 5-year officer coming off the island, which is great. He's joining us in a week or 2. And we have another kid coming out. I hate to call him a kid, but he's in his early 20s. He's coming out of the academy. He's been with us already for a while. So he's coming out of the academy. So he's joining us imminently as well. So that'll be great to fill those 2 plugs. That said, they've had a kind of a tough year, and we got to pay, right? We have to have police officers. It doesn't, we can't not have them staffed. So, and then with legal expenses, we've had a couple of cases that have gone a little bit more than we anticipated, and I'd rather be conservative and just have a little extra money in the budget just in case. I think we'll be okay, but to put that 100,000 into police overtime now and 75 into the legal budget would be better. The third one is the 143 TV. We put money through every year, every town meeting we transfer it. And the new number, which I just got today, is like $58,000 and change, but I'm going to firm that up. But that's what it is. It's the money as of we made a transfer in November, so this is the money that we've gotten since then. And again, the numbers
Yeah, 5.8, Chris, 5.8 or 6.8?
58.
5.8, okay.
I'm trying to find my other phone. Did you have a question about that, Rob?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. And obviously I'm only asking about matters of public record, but the waterways related litigation, I think we know about. Is the contract claim in Superior Court or is it in arbitration?
That was actually it was a diversity claim, but it was a contractor out of Rhode Island. And again, it's not secret. It's a public case.
Yeah, so it's in the federal court?
It was a Bound Brook. The work that was done there. We thought it had all gone away, and then it came back. The bond surety ended up suing to try to get money back, and we ended up in a long conversation. So that that cost that was unexpected. It wasn't, we haven't done a trial or anything like that. I think we're gonna end up with a judgment, a settlement judgment. So, we
Okay, I don't want to, I was just curious what it was. The other thing, and this is again, sort of things that have been said at public meetings, is there's been some things said in connection with the ongoing zoning bylaw amendment effort about the legal budget not providing quite as much professional support as they might like, which raises a bunch of different questions.
that was separately funded, so that we had a separate pot of money just for,
Okay.
and they did spend through a lot of it. It turns out there was still a little bit left, as we discovered, so we got a credit and we were working through, and it turns out there was a little bit of money left. We funded it through 3 different pots. There was town money and there were 2 different tranches of state money that we got to help fund that.
Really?
Yeah, I think some of it related through ARPA money, but I don't care how it came to us, but it came from the state. So, and it turns out there was a little bit still left in one of those accounts. So we still actually have a little bit left. When I say a little bit, it's a small 5-digit number. It's not a very, but a lot of money was spent last cycle. Council was used a lot for meetings, and going into the fall. There was a lot of things that went into the fall. That said, council was also used for this cycle, and we're within the budget for the cycle and the things that you're looking at, Rob. So
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna be interested in whether, you know, the product that we get has been fully vetted. No, not just by the committee, but by council, and if they're still taking the position that it hasn't, legal, you know, professional expert support hasn't been adequate, that may be a relevant factor in our consideration of those bylaws.
I would say, Les, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the select board meeting, but that was discussed at length. If you had a
Oh,
chance-
was it? I watched some and then it fizzled out on me, so.
Yeah, so I referenced you were probably watching, so
I was at one point.
I think Gene gave you a shout out. So if you want to watch some of that meeting, there was actually a long conversation. So there's 7 zoning articles.
Yeah, want, Chris, in your sentence, the word want carries a lot of baggage, but I will. So yeah, I started and then I just, the feed wasn't working for me. So I'll go back and check that, and if there are relevant conversations, I'll send references to this committee where they can find them to look in on what the thinking.
They were all vetted through council. So all the things that are coming through have been vetted.
Fine. Okay,
There's
that's
4
the short of it then. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
4 reorganizations, the MBTA, zoning, I'm sorry, parking, changing the parking regs and the minimum standards, and oh geez,
Yeah.
a buffer zone around the village, and 3A. So
Well, it seems that I mean, we'll talk about this more, but the conversation that never seemed to get to a conclusion had to do with the adoption of floor area ratio.
that's not coming forward. So
Good. Thank you. Good. All right. That's then I have nothing more to add, so carry on.
do you have a question for me about the budget, Diane?
Yeah, my question's similar in the legal realm. When I was looking through the line item budget, I noticed that says legal town council is budgeted at 200,000. Is that our full legal budget?
Yeah.
And so my question is, I actually recall when I first got on the select board in 2011, that was our legal budget. Was $200,000, and we were going over every year, and we were talking about how we can get it to 200. And these are extraordinary times, and I just wonder basically if we're under budgeting that line item.
That very conversation happened last night.
So it's funny because when Rob said the feed fizzled out, I was like, I tuned in too, but then I fizzled out, so I didn't get it.
So that very conversation happened last night, and I concurred that I understood that. At the same time, I said, I if we need to fund it a little more in the fall, we can. I said, I don't want to have to start tweaking programs or staff, and I don't have to right now. And at the same time, I think we have to take a hard look at, how we've been using it. And not that it's not important. When we did a transition, we really need to take a harder look at some of what we were doing and how we're doing it, doing some training. and I also understand we're gonna be into contract negotiation years next year. She'll probably be using our labor council a little bit more. So, we had
And
done.
those are expensive.
Right, so we hopefully, well, hopefully they won't be as expensive as they could be, but they could. So if we want to be really conservative, I put more money in there than 200,000. We had originally only put in 150 and then we're up to 175, now we're up to 200. That said, I can't make the budget. I think we'll be fine in the fall to be a little more flexible, but I'm not comfortable doing it right now. So we understand if we have to supplement it, we will. I don't want to put a budget that's not real. I also think we need to take a harder look at how some of the boards and committees are using council. And there's also a couple things that are wrapping up now, which I hopefully will go away, and some things might be heating up too. So
Chris, when does the school contract come up for?
next year, everybody is next. We have one more year. Next year's the third year for everybody.
Okay. All right, good. I wasn't sure if they were going to start in the spring. Okay, so the supplemental appropriation for fiscal 2024, if
There's
we don't
three.
have-
Yeah, it's got to be the money for the cost of TV,
Yep,
then the 100,000 for police and 75,000 for the legal budget, and then.
but if we don't have a firm number for the one.
Right, if you want to, I need to get you a harder number on the cost of TV, so you might want to wait one more week on that.
Yeah, I
But,
think we should.
okay.
Okay, so I'll write down that we're going to handle that on May 1st, and hopefully we'll be done.
The stabilization is a little simpler, so there's only two contributions to that I have in front of me now that I'm recommending to everyone. One is capital. We're going to go back to the more traditional method of us just putting money into the capital stabilization and taking it back out. But at the request of the select board and you folks and others, I'm recommending the 100,000 of free cash go into this to raise the number from 1,966 to 2,066,000, which is a 5% increase. So it's important. And we have the money, so doing it is a good thing. You know, I mean, I'd like to be able to take more of it into the budget, but at this point I can't. But we have the money in free cash, so it works. And then the other is the OPEB trust fund. So the planned contribution for next year for the first contribution is 229,637. I'm recommending the 200,000 come out of free cash and then 29,637 come out of the budget. Last year, we funded this entire contribution from free cash, so we're starting to put more into the budget. I would have liked to put more into the actual budget. Again, I'm trying to be very conservative as how we set this up for next year, and we put another amount of money in the fall. These both follow our standard financial policies, and I have two questions. Fran.
Yeah, I had a question. I couldn't find the conservation agent listed anywhere except under permits and inspections. And,
Yeah, so we fund them actually through fees. We set them up along when we changed the structure, when we brought the conservation agent in-house, we're able to fund them out of the fees that are generated. So they're actually paid out of the conservation revolving fund that we have.
You mean to say conservation agents only pay $10,000 a year?
No. They're paid more than that, but
Yeah.
they're paid kind of, it's kind of like, there's a lot of staff for the summer camps. You don't see them in the budget because they're paid out of fees that come in from the camps. So the conservation agent, I could get you the exact salary. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's Charlotte Pechtel.
Charlotte Pechtel, yeah, does a great job.
Yeah, she's paid mostly 10,000 comes out of the budget. The rest comes out of the fees that are generated by conservation. So she's
Okay,
kind of,
well, I didn't see her listed anywhere else, so I was concerned, was that a typo or?
no. That's a good catch. And we're lucky to be able to pay for that agent with the fees that are generated. So it doesn't hit tax dollars so much. It's just it's a fee-based
The
fund.
other question I had in facilities, we had FAC, everything's FAC, plumbing, electrical, and I have no idea what they're talking about, that's.
So what I could do, I can have that report redone by building, so you can see it, how it aligns up on building by building.
Yeah.
I was having that same conversation. I met with a member of the select board the other day. The report that comes out of Sarfine is not the cleanest. So
No,
there's a code for him, and I'm not going to go through that with you now.
no, that's fine, as long as I can get some
Yeah.
clarification on it at some point, yeah.
Every building has a budget, so you'll see like 7 or 8 different electricals, because Deer Hill has one, and Osgood has one, and Town Hall has one, and the Senior Center has one, and there's the last 2 digits of the budget code signify the building.
Well, for instance, on the roofs, they got FAC, roof PM, and they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Those are buildings. Those are 9 different buildings, and each of them have a budget for the roof repairs and if they need them and
Actually, it's 10 of them, so.
yeah, then so
That
I
needs to
can
be,
get you
that needs to be illuminated a little bit.
yeah, I can run the report on facilities.
Okay.
By building.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, Diane?
I just have a nitpicky Scribner's question. In the action blocks under Article 7, it says transfer funds to capital stabilization fund, 5% increase over, should that say FY24 budget?
Yes. Well, yes, I should say FY24.
And
We
then
haven't
also,
finalized all of that yet, but thank you for that. So
yeah, and then also in the from column, it says free cash FY25 budget. It would be free cash from FY23 or FY24? Or FY24?
it's FY24.
Where
That's available right now, not next
Okay.
year.
Just-
So the free cash, so for capital stabilization, the free cash is coming out of money that we have now. The 1966 is coming out of the money for FY25. So that's money that'll become available July 1.
Okay,
The OPEB trust fund, the 200,000 of free cash available now. The 29,637 is coming available July 1. So does that make sense?
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
It's kind of a hybrid. We've done this before, the kind of a split, funding for these stabilization items. So those are those.
Okay, can you,
Only two.
just so that,
I-
so that when Lee and Tina watches, clarify what numbers, what budget years we're changing
Okay.
here.
Sure. So the recommendation
In the column.
Yeah, the other. So for Article 7, the recommendation is this is for FY25, capital stabilization for $2,066,060. And that's a split of $1,966,060 from the FY25 budget and $100,000 from available free cash.
Okay,
But that represents a 5% increase, roughly. I mean, it's a tiny fraction more than that, but I'm using it around.
okay,
For OPEB trust fund, the total contribution, or I should say deposit, will be $229,637. And I can get Lee and Tim this memo too. It's $200,000 from available free cash, and $29,637 from the FY25 budget.
okay,
so basically in the from column, that's correct. It's free cash and FY25. My only
Right.
concern then is just that it's 5%, under action on the transfer to capital stabilization, it's 5% over FY24.
I will make sure the language is.
That's just a Scribner's error, yep.
Yeah. But we haven't gotten to Tracy's been pulling her hair out as we kind of get to the end on this. So. Any errors are my fault, not hers. Any errors are mine. She's doing a great job.
And I wouldn't be me if I did
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
these things, so.
And again, I'm not aware of at the moment that water or sewer putting anything into their stabilization fund. So I have nothing from them.
okay, Mike, I called you by the right name. I took you by surprise.
Yeah, so hey, Chris, so for the capital fund, so is the $2,066,060 now the new kind of floor going forward? Because yeah, I mean, you're taking the 5% from free cash, but that doesn't imply that it, builds the capital fund up, which has been certainly a source of discussion for a couple of years now.
It most certainly builds it up for FY25. You're correct in saying it doesn't guarantee it's upgraded for 26. That's the intent. The intent is to find that money in the FY26. I wanted to get us. We had the money from free cash. I would have only increased it 2%, but we can go up to 5%. So if I can increase, I'd like to make that the new base going forward. That's going to be the plan, and you'll hold me to that when we have our conversations in the fall and the spring for next year.
Okay, all right, so it's the intent, but you can't necessarily make the numbers work at this point.
Yeah, not for the out years, but I'd like to. That's the plan.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Question. All right,
Okay, so are we ready to make a recommendation on this one? Is everyone comfortable with it? Okay, so could I get a motion to recommend Article 7, stabilization and other special funds to the warrant for annual town meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
I'm sorry. Mary, was that you? Okay, so it's Diane and Mary. And we need a roll call. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, I.
Fran Collins,
I,
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Mary McGoldrick,
aye.
and Gina Stino is an aye. All right, let me just. Stabilization. Okay, so then the next item is Article 9, allocation of funds for one-time cost.
And there were two additions to this too, which I'll get to as we get through.
what
it.
about Article 8?
That's capital. We're not ready for that one yet. You're getting to that next week.
Okay,
Again, if you want to watch, there'll be meeting tomorrow night on Zoom. if you
Okay.
want. So there are several things in here. I'll go through them one at a time. The project management services is something the select board asked for. And Brian Joyce has recommended we do this as a service at this point, not as a retained person. We had another engineer, that was Jason Federico, who left us for Norwell, he's now their water superintendent. And we haven't backfilled the position. That said, as we're obviously pouring more money into infrastructure issues, we're gonna need more project management services. So the recommendation here is to put $95,000 into an article and into a fund, I should say, and it'll be available to hire, on-call project management services as we need for various projects. For example, we have the tennis courts coming up. If we need to hire someone to do some extra work on that. Depending on what happens with other buildings and projects over the next 6 to 12 months, we may end up needing to make this a contracted whole person, but right now this is funds that will probably just be used for a service. And it may not be one person or one fund, and maybe different ones depending on what we're doing. The second one is what I discussed before, $342,399. And this is the one-shot special education plug for next year. The next one is 30,000 more for the reserve fund. I know it's been you folks have asked, and so have the select board. So this will jump the number to 270 something. I think I'm afraid I hold on, I have it here somewhere. Let's see. No, it's not there. Sorry, I can pull it up in a second, but it's this is again. I'd like to build that into the budget forever, but at the moment I can't. So, but this does raise the reserve fund for next year. There's some sewer repairs. There's a line in the back of Deer Hill School that broke. It's really only affected one bathroom, but it's a faculty bathroom. Because the line's at an awkward place, it's got to be rebuilt. The estimate's about 35,000. We were gonna come to you for funding for this, but we couldn't get everything to line up. So it's just as well that we do it over the summer break. So it's a repair. So but it's substantial. It's not insubstantial. We have to bring in a contractor to do it. And it'll make
So the sewer fund repair for Deer Hill is going to wait? Is that what you're saying, Chris?
well, yeah, the building's working. It's like a bathroom in the back that has to be fixed. So we have to fund it. So I'm recommending we take money out of free cash to fund it in the summer. We don't have to accelerate the repair because we can't do it until school's out anyway.
Yeah.
And because there's the elementary school, they don't close till June. So there's no reason to come and try to seek emergency funding for it. They'll have to just use another bathroom for now. It's a faculty bathroom. It's not like they have to traipse to the Osgood School. There's other bathrooms in the building. It's just the one that's not working. There's two new ones that were added. I apologize for this not having been in there earlier. The town was just accepted into a Department of Environmental Protection sewer asset management program. So we're receiving a $225,000 semi-reimbursable grant to do an asset management assessment and plan for the sewer department. 135 will be reimbursable. We need to budget the entire amount. That's all kind of come out of sewer retained earnings. They have the money. And over the course of the year, we'll get 135,000 back, and the town's contribution, or the sewer department's contribution, will be $90,000. So that's an add-on into the one-time costs. And again, I just got a notice from DEP today about that. So we've been approved into the program. Us and a number of other communities. The last one's a very minor one, but the DPW wanted to do this. It's transferring $1,500, which is effectively coming out of free cash now, that was received as fine income for illegal removal of some trees, and putting it into the tree bank revolving fund, which then gets spent on trees. So makes some sense. That's what it's for. And fines don't normally go right into the revolving fund; they come back to the general fund. So this kind of runs it through free cash, but it's only $1,500, and the money's there. So it's the amount that was paid for these illegal tree cut downs. There were town trees cut down by private owners in the right of way. So it happened like a year ago. So,
Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Meg is in the waiting room.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was paying attention. I think so was no. Oh, there she is. Got it. Okay. All right, she's in.
Meg is in at 7:50.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Mary.
No problem. I don't know why you can't look at 15 different things at one time and talk.
I was blocking that part of my screen with the other thing I had up. So I only have one little screen at home. I don't have my big screen. It was like, I don't know.
Thank you both, and apologies for my tardiness.
No problem. Thanks for coming.
Did you have a question for me, Mike?
Yeah, actually, it's a comment and a question. So
Sure.
first is, there's a comment from Ellen Maher in the Q&A. There's a number for the reserve fund, just not, just I'm not sure if she's clarifying something. My question also is around this sewer asset management grant.
Yep.
Can you just walk me through again where the money's coming from, what we're getting back? Because I think you said it was coming from the sewer, like the
Retained
sewer.
earnings. Right. So that's like their free cash. It's their version of free cash. They have, I
Yeah,
want to say they have about $1.5 million in their version of free cash. So this would allocate the $225,000 of it for this grant. So what it is, it's a sewer asset management plan. If you want a more in-depth explanation, I'll have Brian Joyce send you a memo, but it's something that the state does with sewer departments all over the state.
yeah, no, it's
And,
cool. I just want to understand the movement of the money at this point. So the 225 is coming out of the sewer reserve fund, the sewer
Well,
department reserve fund.
they're retained earnings, which is like our free cash.
Their retained earnings, yeah, okay. And then once that's spent, we'll get 135 back,
Correct, and that'll go
And
back
then-
into retained earnings. Yeah.
and that'll go back to their retained earnings.
Yeah, so the net cost of the sewer department will be $90,000.
Okay, and then just, yeah, and then just, I'm curious, Ellen was looking to, I think, clarify a number in the
Yeah,
queue.
that's what the fund is right now. Actually, give me just a second. I know I have it. Okay, it's been really slow. So the reserve fund.
Diane, what a beautiful scarf you have.
She's very frisky.
So it's at the moment this year it's 248,418. The recommendation with this by putting a 30,000 in brings it to 278,418. So and again, if we want to go, if you want to go higher, which is you're free to do, we can do that in the fall. But that would bring it from 248, which it is this year, to 270 next year. It's not quite to the goal that we're setting, but it's getting a big chunk closer.
So Ellen's question is about 253,386 for the reserve fund.
Yeah,
Is that a number that was discussed previously and changed?
No, so this is the number this year is what I just said. It's 248. We were going to go up nationally just a little bit, but rather than do that in the budget, the goal was the select board's budget message was go higher and use free cash. So we did. So it's getting up to 278 with free cash instead of just going up to 253 with
Okay,
internal loan. So, and again, the goal, of course, is to be just like we did with, just as we were saying with the capital money, to bake that more into the budget going forward each year. But I couldn't make a leap of 30 this year without, considering where we're trying to stretch the schools. Hopefully next year we can bake that up even more in. And again, if we want to, if there's a consensus is to go higher in the fall, once free cash is certified, you can always put more into it.
okay, so are there any more questions on this? Are we ready to make a recommendation for the allocation of funds? Article 9, is everybody okay with that? Okay, all right, so could I get a motion to recommend Article 9, allocation of funds for one-time cost, to recommend in the warrant for annual town meeting?
So moved.
So that's Rob. Do I have a second?
Second,
And Mike.
Possible that's the first article or vote I've moved in 4.5 years, so.
Well, we have lots of other opportunities. Okay, so roll call vote, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Fran Collins,
I,
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Meg Wheeler, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay, so we ready for Article 10?
Article 10 is the annual renewal of the revolving funds that were set up by the Municipal Modernization Act some years back. The one that may vaccination clinics were created a year ago. We kind of forgot to put them in, but they're back in. So all of these are pretty much, they're all places where there's special money coming in for a specific service and it stays and then comes back out. Recreation being different. Recreation has a whole lot of different programs that go in it, and the programs self-fund their operation. So all the others are small. Recreation is very large because they run a couple of very large summer programs. All the others are very modest. And again, this is just they're all the same. They're being repeated from the past. So.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Fran?
yeah, you've explained this to me for the last 4 years, and I still don't quite get it.
Okay.
What do these numbers represent? Library patron printing,
They
10,000.
represent the maximum that's supposed to come into the fund. So
From,
yeah, so that's the maximum amount of money supposed to go in it. Now, as I say that, Fran, that could be waived by the select board anyway during the course of the year. So you just have to adopt a maximum number. And we've never hit them anyway. So, I mean, we put 10,000 in there. You have to make a lot of copies at the library to get the $10,000. So what happens is, people pay for the printing and then we have to pay for the cost of the printing because we lease the copy machine. So people pay, if in that case of library printing, they'll print stuff out at the library, they'll pay, and then we have to pay for the costs because we pay a fee based on usage for the copy machine. So
all
that's how
right,
that, it's like a
Elder Affairs program's $100,000. Tell me how that works.
So again, they do a lot more programming. And I could give you the actual numbers that run through the program in a given year. So before we set them up, they used to keep everything very neatly in a shoebox, which is very nice, but it wasn't really the way it was supposed to be done. So we moved into the revolving fund. So what happens, like, for example, they let's say they're doing a lunch, right? St. Patrick's lunch, you have to pay $10. It comes into that fund, and then the expenses for the event are charged out of that fund. So it stays off budget. So if you pay for the St. Patrick's corned beef lunch, the expenses for the St. Patrick's corned beef lunch are in the revolving fund. Or if you're paying to go on a trip to, to see, what is that thing at Jordan's, that Christmas display.
Christmas
Jordan Rush.
display.
Oh, yeah, Santa's Kingdom, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, they run a trip to that. That's how that works for them. So
So they can spend up to that much money, but most of that's gonna come back and being reimbursed by whoever is.
Yeah, it's not like the fund doesn't really accumulate anything typically. Rec does a little bit, but then the money comes back out. But what
Okay.
the money comes in and then it pays for the expenses. It's kind of like it keeps it off budget because the money that comes in theoretically goes back right out to pay for the cost, or the
So in
people.
other words, we're allowing them to spend this much money on programs with the expectation that most of it will be returned, and whatever they spend will be returned.
Well, there's no money budgeted for this, Fran. All that means is that's the maximum amount of money that can flow through the fund. So the revolving fund only works if money goes in. So we don't put any money in it. The only
Okay,
money,
all right. I
yeah,
got
there's
you.
no tax dollars. So none of these funds represent tax dollars. They only represent programmatic or fee dollars.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it now. Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
I hope, I hope I'm not further complicating it, but just to Fran's point, which I think is like, where do the expenses that go up against these revenue lines, where are they kind of
The funds have both
managed?
the revenue side, and they have an expense side. They have both.
Right?
Each
And
fund has-
theoretically, to the earlier question, the conservation agent's salary is offset by this ceiling of income on conservation and stormwater fees.
Yeah, in
Right.
theory, yeah, that's yes.
So
What-
technically that salary is off budget, if you will.
Yes, yeah, that was when we brought that in-house, that was the bonus. Like we were paying a contractor, if you remember, Diane, we had a contractor. So we actually cut the fees and brought someone in full time. So we actually paid less money for more service. And they were happy to have it paid off the funds. So and as far as I'm aware, with the exception of the $10,000 a friend noted, it's in the operating budget. All the rest of that salary comes out of that revolving.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on this one?
Yep.
Okay. So could I have a motion to?
So moved.
Who did that?
Right.
Motion to recommend Article 10 Departmental Revolving Funds Annual Spending Limits for the warrant for annual town meeting. So Fran moved it.
Mary will second.
Okay, and roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, I.
Fran Collins,
All right,
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Meg Wheeler, I.
and Gina Stino is an aye. Thank you. So are we ready for Article 11, Revolving Fund for Library Programs and Specialized Inspections?
So this is two new funds. So libraries historically not charged for anything ever. But they've actually created a passport program. So I don't know if everyone's gone there to get their passport. So you can go there instead of the post office, and they get a little fee based on that, right? So they process your paperwork, and I hear it's become quite popular. And they would like to keep that money in the library, right? So the only way to do that, because right now it just flows through the general fund. It's not a lot of money, but they'd like to keep it. And I've long encouraged them to consider charging for programs, and it's a horrible thing for me to say that because the library's always been free for everything. But I said, if there's a specialized program you're doing, there's nothing wrong with charging a fee, right? So that whether they get to that point or not, this will at least they have this very first program that they charge for, and it'll allow them to keep that in the library to spend on library things, right? It's not a lot of money, but the couple $1,000s they generate from it will be able to go to books or something in the library rather than flowing through the general fund, which seems fair and appropriate. The other one is for all the specialty inspections, and we kind of do this in a different way now, but this will, I think, simplify it. It's for, we have a building inspector and there's building fees, and those are all handled separately. These are for, you have to pay a fee for a gas inspection or electrical inspection or some other specialized engineering inspection. We either have to hire someone to do it, and we already have this for food inspectors, right? We have a specialized food inspector, so you pay a fee, and the money goes into the fund, and then we contract, and then they get paid out of the fund. This will do that for those. Some of these people are on our payroll, but they're kind of per diem employees. They get paid by inspections, not as hourly or anything like that. So that would pay for them too. It just keeps that, again, that's money that's going for a very specialized service. It's not like the general fees we get for buildings. These are the specialized sub fees in those categories where we have a specialized inspector, and it just seemed to make sense to set this up because things are getting more complicated. We're having a few more of these kind of specialized inspections that we used to have. We've always done electrical and gas and plumbing, but sometimes there's even other ones that are happening, and this allows the funds to be, I think, easier accounted for.
Any more? Oh, Diane?
Yes, sorry. Do we have to set annual spending limits like we did in the
Yes.
previous article?
Yeah, we do, and I don't know. I have to double check with Carolyn. I thought because when I already run this through council and there isn't one in there. They're not going to be very high. The library one is probably going to be $5,000. The building fees I think won't be more than 50. But I have to. That's a good catch, and it didn't come back from council with those, so I have to double check with them as to why if they didn't.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I guess I had the same question as Diane, just in terms of, the amounts and how it's tracked. I mean, if, $50,000 in a fund coming and going, what's sort of the auditing of that?
Yeah, the finance department. So we actually just went through this with something else entirely. We're trying to, we have a new account, right? You met Corey. So we're trying to, improve our internal processes. So by having these separate fees with ins and outs, it makes it a little easier to track and go right back and say, oh, there's the money and there it went and there it goes. And again, because and with library, it's brand new, right? Like I said, they've never had any revenue from fees. They don't do it. So that's a very easy one to capture, and it really doesn't affect their budget. But I did notice that, and I thank you for bringing that up, Diane and Mike. I have to double check. I don't know why there's not a number in there, and that's if it's on me, it's on me, and you may have to just kick it for a week, and I'll get you the accurate numbers. But I think what, if I recall, it was going to be 5,000 on library because it's not that big a program, and I think that the specialized fees is 50, but I'll have to double check that too. Do you have a question, Fran, on the same thing?
Yes. Does this require a new hire, this director?
No.
Inspections?
No. We actually have people on that are retained already for electrical and plumbing.
Yeah.
But from time to time, we have to hire a specialized inspection for roofing or engineering or something. If someone's doing something unusual with geotech or something.
So who was this director of permits and inspections? Who was that?
That's John Howland. He's already
Okay, fine. All right.
So he
he'll
manages
oversee
the
that,
program. He's not going to get any money from it.
Yeah. which is how it's been running along pretty much anyways.
Yeah, it just handled it a different way.
Okay, thank you.
But it's probably best if you just postpone this. Let me get you some numbers. So
Okay, so we're gonna postpone Article 11.
Yeah,
I mean, you could vote on it without the numbers, but I don't think you want to. So
I think we want the numbers. I think that's important.
I can give you numbers now, but then if I'm wrong, then I'll have to
Yeah,
come
no, that's fine.
to fix
We'll
it.
add it to the next meeting.
Article 12 is the annual Chapter 91 liability. You have to protect the state anytime there's any work done. We had a big project recently, the boat ramp improvements. It's just something we renew every year because you never know if it's going to be, even if it's seawall repair or anything we do on a regular basis, we need to have this in place by state requirements. So it's something we renew every year.
And this recurs in every warrant?
It's been in every warrant for as long as I'm
Annual warrant. Okay, Fran?
oh, sorry, no, my hand's getting numb here, let me put it down.
Okay, all right, so we ready to go on Article 12? Could I get a motion to recommend Article 12 to be added to the warrant for annual town meeting? For our vote to be added to the warrant for annual town meeting?
I'll move it.
Second,
Diane.
And did someone second it?
second, yeah, Fran.
Okay. All right, roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Meg Wheeler, I.
and Gina Stino, aye. Great. Article 13, additional real estate exemptions.
This is an annual renewal of the package of real estate exemptions for elderly, disabled, and low income. That's again, it's an annual renewal. It's required to keep the exemptions in place.
Okay. Does anyone have questions on this one? No? Oh, was that your hand up, Mary? No, okay. All right, so can I get a motion to recommend Article 13, additional real estate exemptions for annual renewal? For inclusion in the warrant for annual town meeting?
So moved.
Mary? Go a
Second.
second. Sorry.
Second, Mark Cameron.
Okay, so roll call, Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, I.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Meg Wheeler, I.
and Gina Stino, aye. So
Article-
Article 14, property tax deferral.
So this is a request to expand the income range that allow for seniors who want to defer their taxes. That's somebody who puts their taxes kind of on hold, but they pay like interest accumulates. And this would allow their overall, I'm calling it income, but it's called something else in the statute. Up to, you have it in the memo that I distributed. I want to say it's going up to $61,000 from 50 something. And the assessors are recommending this increase.
51 to 69.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So
Okay.
that'll be the new maximum annual income that seniors are allowed to have to be able to defer their taxes. And there are a number of people who do this. It gets kind of expensive. And it waits until the property's sold or transferred.
Fran?
Oh, you just answered my question. That's what I assumed, that it was, you just postponed the inevitable. You
Yeah.
still gotta pay
And
them.
actually, the interest rates is not insubstantial. So we had one that settled a few years ago for a couple $100,000. It was actually kind of nice. But it's not insubstantial. It's not an insubstantial cost. People only tend to do this if they're in a situation where they don't have a choice, or they have a sale that's pending and they want to delay it a little.
Is the interest still around 14%?
Yeah, I don't remember, Fran, but the last I recall it was fair. I want to say it was 12, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, right, it's not.
It's law. It's statutory. We don't set it. It's set by state law.
Right.
And
Thank you.
it's not insubstantial. And there are a number. There are a lot of them, but the treasurer collector's office tracks these very closely. So,
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Chris, so does this become a lien against the property? So that when it transfers, it's gotta be taken out of funds?
yeah, I'm not sure what the legal. I'm not sure what legal format is, but it is. Yes, there's actually you go into the program, and I don't know if it's a lien. I think it may be some kind of form of a lien, and it's collected upon sale. So
Okay.
sale or transfer. So right, the town is becomes first in line for the money.
Okay.
So
There's got to be something in the registry, a notice or
yeah,
something.
yeah. It's a very procedural process with a lot of checks and balances. And again, there's not a lot of people who do this. But if you're sitting on a property that's worth a lot of money, you don't have a lot of cash. It's and again, people sometimes do this with a pending sale or transfer for a year or two. And again, it can add up. We had somebody who was in the program for I think almost a decade, and we had like a $200,000 settlement about 3 or 4 years ago. So, and we don't budget for it, right? It just becomes extra revenue when it comes in. It's actually not bad. So,
Any more questions? Okay, so could I get a motion to recommend Article 14, property tax deferral for seniors for inclusion in the warrant for annual town meeting?
So moved.
A second?
Second,
Okay, roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, I.
Fran Collins,
I,
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Meg Wheeler, I.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay, so now Article 15. Community Preservation Committee, are we ready?
They're not ready this week. They'll be on for next week. And the good news is that Article 16 is gone. We took it off. It turns out that we actually planned ahead in December of 22. The article that approved the various land transfers also approved the select board entering a lease of 30 years or more for the towers when they were ready. So you don't need this, which is great.
I saw that and I thought, where is it?
Right. So I mean, it's always nice to be able to pull. We put it on just in case I didn't, with the
Yep.
second flurry of things, but town council reread the warrant and reread the motion. So oh, it's already in there. I mean, it was a long motion, so so it's all good. So the select board will at least will be recommended to them sometime in the next few weeks, and then we'll be able to actually construct that tower. So it's coming, which is very exciting. So
That's in Wheelwright?
it'll be in Wheelwright, yeah. So that'll be the
That's
thing
the
is that we're still waiting. I think we're still waiting on is the home rule petition had to go to the stateway to do a little land swap to put that in. So there's some the House has approved it. The Senate has only given it a partial, and they've gone through a couple of readings, but they haven't gone all the way through. We apparently are the first people going through a new process for this kind of transfer. They've changed the rules a little bit, so we've become unfortunately a guinea pig, which has slowed this down because the House approved the transfer back in November, and the Senate still has approved it in April. So I'm hoping it doesn't get stuck because but we're checking with them regularly. So that's the only thing that's going to hold up the award of a lease is that state
And-
action. So
Do you know where they'll go in through? Will it be through Forest Ave?
yeah,
or-
it'll come in down through Forest Ave. It's not exact. It's in the neighborhood-ish of where that old radar tower is. That's already in there. It's
Yeah.
not right there, but it's out of the way. People really shouldn't notice it, but it's going to have a very positive impact on cell service on the whole northeast corner of town, which is really problematic now from a public safety perspective, much less if you live there's perspective. So it'll help a lot. But it's all ready to go. It's all been decided. It's been a great combination project with IT and police and in my office. So it's been really good. So, but again, the good news is not an article anymore. You have to worry about it. So
Okay. So we don't have anything for 17 or 18 or 19 or 20 or 21.
that's all zoning. And then the noise bylaw you'll be getting next week officially. That's pretty much, it's Hingham's with modifications. So we took it, we modified it up based on the select board's comments. They made a few more comments last night. I have to run back through council. So I'd say it's 90% the same as the Hingham bylaw with some changes. And if I remember Mike saying he was I don't know if you were the proponent or you were a lead spokesperson on the one in Hingham. So there's a few things that are different, but not anything major. So
I was actually shocked to hear that there wasn't one because I was under the impression all these 35 years that we've lived here that there was one. And I tell everybody, oh, you can't do that before 7.
well, there is, but it's like at 11 o'clock at night. It's nothing. I mean, that's the challenge. I had somebody complain. We looked at the bylaws and it doesn't limit construction equipment until like, again, it's some crazy hour and it's late. And it's like, well, you can actually do work at 6 a.m. on a Sunday right now, which I don't think people are that excited about.
I don't think so.
Um,
I don't think so.
but again, you don't have that in front of you officially tonight, but you'll have it next week.
Yep. Okay, hold on a minute.
Looks like you have 2 people with questions.
Yeah, okay, Fran.
and I have to comment about, I read that over carefully this afternoon. I really think that they shouldn't, that these lawn mowing people, whatever they call themselves, what do they call themselves now?
Landscapers?
Landscapers, yeah. They shouldn't start till 8 o'clock in the morning and they should be done by 6 o'clock at night.
I think they should be done by 5 o'clock, so.
By
the people-
5 o'clock be fine with me because those leaf blowers,
Dinner.
they just are so annoying. And you get 4 or 5 of them going and for God's sakes, I mean, I spent my life in engine rooms and ships with lots of noise and they got the ship beat by a country mile. So
We sit on our deck every night for dinner and they start right when the food's on the table.
Oh, yeah.
That's neighborhood stuff. That's
That's-
not landscapers, but some of it.
It's a major quality of life issue, and I think it requires a whole lot more talk.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, thank you. Mike,
Yeah, I was just, Chris, I haven't read it, but I was just gonna ask a little tongue in cheek, we're not measuring decibels or anything like that, right? Which, at one point was a consideration in Hingham, so.
No, I'm glad that Hingham went through that. I decided not to do it because you have to have meters and everything is far too complicated. So
It's completely unrealistic. You can't do it. It's just, it's in the eye of the beholder, where you measure them from, distance, levels, all of that type of stuff. So, no, but I think it's great that we're formalizing something for that.
what would you do? Have a ranger in every neighborhood?
you have to, the police will have to run around with like a decimeter in their car, and it's just it's really. I mean, you have to calibrate them, and I believe me, I did this in New York too. What some communities did, they just banned leaf blowers. They banned gas powered leaf blowers. Period.
I would vote for that in a second.
Uh,
And you live in a neighborhood where every front door is 80 feet from the next front door, and somebody gets a gas powered leaf blower for their birthday.
Mhm.
Oh, I want to be clear.
That machine, I once figured it out. That machine is heard inside of maybe 50 or 60 houses when they're out chasing one leaf across their lawn.
You know, my
they used to
husband,
have a device called a rake. It seemed to work pretty good. Didn't make a whole lot of noise. And
Kept your
you just
children
exercise at the same time.
Fran, I'm gonna join you in the grumpy neighbor club. Proudly. I hate those things.
Diane,
No, this is just kind of what I've been paying attention to with the zoning bylaws and all these things. This is the one that I think is going to generate the most conversation because it's something every one of us can relate to and has a question about. So I just think whoever's presenting it next week should be prepared to hear some questions, because I read it this morning and thought, oh, what if you're having like a wedding in your yard? And there's music, and the music goes to 11 o'clock at night, and so I do think it's going to have questions. I think this is a good test market for what might happen at town meeting.
No,
Well,
I
you did talk about exceptions. I mean,
Right, but that was, yeah.
I know. I hear you, Diane. The core of it was really around construction and landscaping. That said, the Hingham bylaw is much broader than that, and we just kind of brought it over. And that again, the other thing, it's not self-effectuating, right? Somebody has to call and say there's a problem, right? Someone has to call and complain. We're not gonna, the police aren't gonna be driving around saying, oh, look, there's noise, right? So
Right.
but
And
it's really
believe me,
construction.
yeah, I'm all for it. I just want to, all of us, including whoever's presenting at town meeting, on behalf of the bylaw, just kind of goes in there anticipating what the questions might be from the.
No, I agree. And I don't know, and this is not a zoning bylaw, this is a general bylaw. It's not a zoning bylaw. It came out of the conversations with the zoning bylaws because people have been doing more construction. And I actually had a resident complain. And when I went to try to look it up, I found there was nothing. And then she texted us.
It's a nuisance bylaw. It doesn't have to do with
basically.
zoning. You can irritate somebody on 60,000 square feet just as convincingly on 18,000 square feet.
Right. So I'm not sure it's going to present it, Diane. I mean, one of the select board, I assume, will take it up as their cause. Because right now it's really just been my office with council just kind of pulling bylaws. We actually incorporate a little bit of Winchesters and Westons into this one. I forget. We changed one of the definitions. So but you will see that next week. And again, I think I agree with you, Diane. Getting these questions out early is going to be important, because you never know. This could actually be the thing that everyone debates. Maybe not angrily, but because they want to say something. Right? So, all right. Now I think you're turning over to citizen petition, so I'm going to step back. So
okay.
So I see that Mr. Longley is here.
He said that he wants to speak on the town hall rehab.
Right. He's the petitioner on that. I don't know. Was anyone able to get a hold of Mr. Is it Norman, the gentleman who's proposing the lead proponent on the water bottle ban? I don't see anybody in the audience on the water bottle ban.
No, there's nobody.
that would be,
We can skip the water bottle and go to the next one since he's in the waiting room.
Okay,
Can
I'll
I
bring
can I
him
make
up.
can I make a suggestion regarding process though, Gene?
Yeah.
I think then
We have to
put it
vote
on
it.
the agenda for one of the future ones, and let's absolutely make sure that the proponents get notice so that, you know, and that they, I remember with one of the citizens petitions within the last couple of years, we got a certain amount of blowback about, you know, the proponents didn't really understand who we are and what we do. And, you know, I think, you know, giving them not just an invitation, but also to tell them in a very short and concise way what it is we're here to do, make a recommendation at town meeting one way or the other. So we're very interested in what they have to say. And also if they could provide us with any materials ahead of time, I'd like to, you know, see the argument and where it's worked or not worked in other towns, et cetera. Because then if nobody does come and we recommend against, or if people do come and don't get what it is we do and sort of object to it, you know, we want to give them the opportunity to make their best case to us so we can make our best case to the town.
Sure, that sounds great. So we'll have to get in touch with these folks and just to ask if somebody wants to come and present at our next meeting.
Yep.
And just to give you context, as you go, if you go into the citizen petition town hall rehab article, so the select board has been having public conversations about, you know, alternative steps, and just so you're all aware, and it's not in front of you tonight, but it will be coming up. They've asked to include two things in the capital budget article. One is the replacement of the roof. So we're going through a design of a roof replacement at 41 Highland, and then funding it. And then a design for a fire suppression system with a historic structure. So those are both going through the capital budget process now. There's funding available for both of those. And I won't get into the long conversation that happened last night about the various triggers for the laws. The assessed value of the town hall is less than $1 million. And again, public buildings are not often assessed regularly, and there's, as Michelle pointed out last night, there's not a lot of comps for them. So last time the building was reassessed was 2011. There are accessibility requirements that trigger at 30%, and no matter what the project is, right? There are a lot of exemptions, but if you're triggering, if something costs more than 30% of the assessed value of the project of the property, you end up triggering all these requirements. And with the building that's assessed at less than $1 million, the roof alone is going to be pushing the edge of that. An HVAC replacing the fire system, not designing, but replacing it could surpass $1 million. So one of the reasons this is a super go slow, apart from the fact that there's a lot of conversation about the future of town hall that have not yet been finalized by any means, is that there's a lot of triggers. There's a lot of, and again, I don't have to tell, as folks, two people on this committee right now have been actively involved in those conversations in the past. So doing this in a piecemeal way is far more complicated than it may appear. And it's not because of that I'm saying so, or Michelle, it's because that's that's what the law triggers. So I want to say that I'm not taking a position on the other article. I'm just giving you context for any conversation and the fact these will be coming through the capital budget article, those two pieces.
Mark?
Yeah, just in terms of the assessed value, tipping the scale there at 30%. This was a big component of the town hall building committee of 2019 to 23, that you can't just pick and choose what you want to do. You have to bring the building up to current accessibility code, and there isn't a way around it. So you know, these projects, regardless of the value of the currently assessed value, that even though it may be so low, even if you were to assess this at $5 million, which is obscenely high, you're talking about $500,000 of work a year for over the next several years. And as work only becomes more and more expensive, it just becomes more and more impractical that we'll ever get to the finish line. So the accessibility thing is a real concern.
Okay, so are we ready to move on to a discussion with Mr. Longley?
Jean, I'd have a quick question.
I do
Yes.
too.
Chris, I'm sorry, could you just clarify for me? So the select board is having capital work on some things to put forward that would effectively make the citizens petition moot or stand in comparison with it, or I'm a
Yeah.
little confused.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it moot. It's just, it's a different approach. So the conversation, so there's right now, there's no alternative. There's no current plan. There's no overall renovation plan for the whole building, right? We know that. And there's no alternative site. The One Pleasant is off the table, right? So that, not only is that not a leased site, but the owner is not engaging with the town. There's no conversation there either. So there's nothing heading for the warrant for the spring. What we're under right now is a requirement based on the inspection done through our inspector, our building inspector, John Hallen, which said that the historic structure can't be occupied by, but the annex could be fire doors, not fire walls, but fire doors, literally fire have been put in, which will keep the building separated enough to be able to keep the annex occupiable, not the historic structure. And we're in the final stages of moving people out of that. So the annex will still be accessible. We also have staff now at 135 King. That's the building the town acquired in the long term for the police station, but in the short term, we're using the offices there. There are 5 offices that now being, people are hoteling in those temporarily. Because we can't fit everybody in the annex. At the same time, there's a conversation about community groups. I think some of you have seen that, about maybe getting a not-for-profit group of groups together to buy the building and preserve it and turn it into something else. And the concern that has been discussed at select board as well, we should do something just to continue to preserve the envelope. And a roof was discussed, 6 years ago or 5 years ago. So it's still relevant. It's still there. It's fairly inexpensive as far as projects go. And it fits within it doesn't appear to trigger. That's the one thing that as a first step would not trigger. It's a very visible thing. And obviously it's the 5th wall. The roof is kind of like a big wall, I guess, right? To keep out the elements. Regardless of what happens, if the building's transferred or whatever, that still needs to get done. So, the select board said, okay, go forward with that. And this funding that was put aside in the reserve, in the capital reserve last fall, potentially for things like this. And then the fire suppression system is clearly something that's going to have to happen at some point. So designing it is not a bad thing. So they said, okay, we can design that too. So the roof design is like 15, I want to say the current estimate on the project for the roof is 285. We don't have a bid. We're not going to have a bid until after we have the design. And then the design estimate for the fire suppression is 75. But we have to go through the designer again. We have to go through a whole procurement process to get someone to design the fire suppression system. And also, by the way, the roof person has to be DCAM certified. So this is, again, it's not I know somebody, right? Under the law, because of it's cost more than $150,000, we need to have a DCAM certified contract. Now, any reputable contractor who has a history can get DCAM certified, but a lot of them don't because they don't do government work. And again, Mark could talk to that more than I can. So public procurement is a very complicated world. I wish it wasn't, but it is. And when you're doing it in a big project, that's one thing because you're dealing with all at once. When you're dealing with piece by piece, it's problematic. This path, this minimalist path with the roof and this design of the fire suppression kind of threads that needle and buys time to the fall to see what might develop between now and then in terms of next steps. So I think the select board I'm not saying anything that's been said publicly, the select board is talking about getting a group together of some form after town meeting to talk about next steps for what to do. But in the interim, it would be just this roof repair and that fire suppression design for the historic structure. Am I answering the question? Okay.
Yeah, no, I just needed to get a little more context because I didn't see last evening's meeting.
Did that give you the context you needed?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Rob?
Just before we hear the presentation, was the committee sent any information by the proponents of this Okay, so I didn't miss anything to prep us for the presentation.
No.
Thank you.
Brandon?
By the way, I don't want to get, I don't want to get.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, no, no. So Mr. Long has put a couple of comments. I'm not going to read them. He's going to be in front of you in a minute. And
Right.
I just want to say I'm not speaking here as an expert, but I am a certified public procurement officer in the state of Massachusetts. As I read the statutes, as Mark has already said, the exempt items are trumped by the percentage of assessed value. So there are clearly a list of assessed items that are exempt, and that includes like fire suppression and window repairs. However, when the cost of those projects exceed, as Mark has already said, 30%, those don't count anymore. There's no exemptions. So I want to be clear. That's what again, I'm not speaking as an expert. I'm telling you though that that's my understanding of the procurement rules. And I most certainly am never going to move on the public side in a way that might violate them. I'm just not going to do that. And I'm going to let him speak for himself, and you can all ask questions, and I'm going to step out. Mary, you have control. You're a co-host, so you can do what you need to. I'm going to promote him in a second. And then I'm going to step out because my dog has been waiting very patiently to be fed. So she's waiting for her food. So I'm going to go feed her, but I'm still here.
It's late.
Yeah, my only comment is you gotta take care of the roof regardless of what we do to the building, because once the roof goes, the whole place is ready to collapse, come in. So we gotta take care of the roof either way, no matter how we do things.
All right. I am now going to step back. I'm going to promise Mr. Longley, and then Mary, you have full control over the, and if you need me, I'm still listening. So,
And who said I wanted full control, Chris? But okay.
now you have the powers that I do to move people in and out. That's what I'm saying. So, okay.
All right. So I actually,
There he is.
okay, good.
Okay, I guess I have to unmute myself and turn on my camera. There we go. Hi.
Don't worry, we would have told you that. We all do it.
Yeah. Thank you for allowing me a chance to speak tonight. I greatly appreciate it. Robert, to what you said, I'm a bit of a novice here, so I'm not exactly sure what I should be saying or what I need to be saying to inform you about the citizens petition. This citizens petition does explain our line of reasoning, and I would just start by asking whether everybody's had a chance to read it.
Well, we do have the article.
Okay.
But you've been listening to our conversation, and you've heard
Yes.
that there are rules and regulations around all of this,
Right.
and those have to be complied with.
Right. So I am a licensed architect. I'm the Chief Operations Officer, CBT Architects. We do work all over Massachusetts. We do lots of work using compliance with 521 CMR, which is the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. And the 4 items that we selected to include in the first phase are not subject to the cost evaluation to determine whether or not the whole building would have to be brought up to comply with 521 CMR. They're exempt. So we can do a little bit more research if I need to produce copies of the pages from the code to show them to somebody because they'd like to see it for themselves. I'd be happy to do that. Okay, so in the wake of the town voting no on something like the 5th attempt to try to do something with respect to town hall since 2008, the first 4 attempts that I'm aware of were very expensive, all-inclusive projects intended to largely replace a portion of the town hall, the 1987 annex, with some newer construction. Very large projects. Architects were hired, engineers were hired, plans were developed, cost estimates were put together, costs were determined. The projects were brought to the voters, and the voters in each case said no. During that time, since 2008, because there were all these pending projects, I can only surmise that the thought of spending money to repair the existing town hall was deemed to be a waste, because why would you want to put something new in that you're in a relatively short amount of time going to rip out with the very large project that was planned? So as a result, there's been a lot of maintenance that could have been done over the last 15, 16 years that's not been done. And then I can suppose that the select board looked at the deteriorated building where no maintenance had been done for an extended period of time and determined, well, maybe it would be better to have a brand new building that at least would not have to be maintained expensively for some period of time. And the One Pleasant Street idea came along, and the voters said no to that too. So a group of us citizens have said, we actually like being in our location at 41 Highland. The building has some severe maintenance issues, and we see that the select board is already moving to replace the roof, which is one of the 4 items that we had in our petition. The others were of equal importance to the building. One was to put sprinklers into the 1857-1929 wing, so that the occupancy, the legal occupancy can be restored, and that space can become useful to the town again. Right now, it's the word has not been the word condemned has not been used, but effectively that's the situation that we're in, so that the condemnation can be removed by having the sprinklers in that wing. The third item was to, at the very least, replace the chiller behind the back of the building that provides for air conditioning for the 1987 annex. I understand the unit is completely dead, and at the very least, it would be nice to replace that, so that as we're heading into the warmer weather, the people that work in town hall, the visitors that come to town hall, can have air conditioning. And then the fourth item that was in the petition was a repair of the front walk, where it has settled and there are some potential tripping hazards. It's a relatively low-cost item, but what one of the petitioners thought was a good idea to eliminate some risk to the town, to eliminate a tripping hazard. So those were the 4 items. Our thinking was, well, the voters have constantly said no to very expensive, large projects. Maybe they might say yes to fix town hall, so that we can stay where we are. And it's not part of the petition for this year, but begin to enter into a program where we can tackle projects one at a time. Identify them, develop the bid documents, go out to bid, procure the contracts, and get some work done, because you certainly can get some work done for $1 million. Instead of constantly making excuses and saying, well, everything is so expensive, and so as a result you wind up with paralysis and nothing ever gets done. So I am one of the taxpayers who would be willing to pay for the work on the petition, and I'm quite sure there's a number of other taxpayers that would like to have the opportunity to vote yes to fund a relatively modest approach to repair town hall, to preserve town hall. This is the initial step. And if somebody wanted to do more and come up with more money, that would be fine with me. But and likewise, if the select board was willing to talk to us, we would be happy to merge what we'd like to see done with their plans, or even make some changes. I think the spirit is that us taxpayers would like to see the town property that we own cared for, and let's put it up to a vote, and let's see if other people would agree, and let's give it a shot.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Longley. We appreciate your input. I know that you've been sitting in the waiting room for quite some time, waiting to have this conversation. And I should have asked you up front if we could limit your time a little bit, but you've contained it, so that's great. Are you a licensed architect in Massachusetts?
Not in Massachusetts, in 4 other states. Other partners who sign and seal the drawings in my company, they are, of course, licensed in Massachusetts.
Okay, so people in your company are licensed.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you understand, we're 150 architects.
Okay.
I'm licensed in 4 other states where they aren't. I just have not been paying my Massachusetts annual licensing fees, but I've been paying them to 4 other states.
I'm just curious what other states you're licensed in. Are any of them in New England, or are they in other areas?
New Jersey, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Maryland.
Okay. And have you reached out and spoken with Nick Berardi or any of the other people that work in the town that have worked on these projects before and the proposals before?
No, I have been working quite a bit with Clark Brewer, who's done significant analysis on the prior plans that have been developed and proposed. All that information, of course, is available on the town website, but he's the one who's bothered to download it and look at it.
Okay, and I see that a couple of other members have comments or questions. Diane?
Yes. So, I mean, just in terms of our role as the advisory committee, we listen and deliberate and discuss the the articles that are put before town meetings. So, I think with a fiscal focus, probably more than some other committees might. But so one of the questions in that is whether there's numbers, because I mean, town meeting is really where we go to appropriate funds, not to take the pulse of whether people want to do a project or not. So that's my big concern with the citizens petition. But I also was at the town hall meeting a few weeks ago, and I am one of these people that want to get something done and I want to vote on the very best option for the town. I think that's my responsibility as an advisory committee member. I think it's my responsibility as a resident in town. So, I am unprepared to vote on this particular matter tonight, just because I really want to see what the select board has in mind, and so that we can take it all in an aggregate. But then secondly, just are there numbers? Because
yes,
it's one thing to say, yeah, this is a great idea, and then walk away. If there's nothing appropriated for it, then nothing is going to happen.
So the petition calls for $1 million, and we've done some detailed estimates of the 4 items of work, and we included in that $1 million $131,000 in contingency. So we've got flexibility. The HVAC work can be just the chiller, or if there's more money left over, we can do more. But the whole idea is it's $1 million cap, and when we run out of money, we run out of project, which is a very different approach, where you say we want to do a project. Oh, what does it cost? Oh, it's over our budget. So no, we have a budget that limits the amount of work, just like at your house. When you run out of money, the project that you want to do might be pushed into the next fiscal year.
Mike, your hand was up next.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Mr. Longley, appreciate your time. So a couple of questions for me. So you've pushed back on the, the code and the cost relative to assessed value. And so I'm curious, I mean, I know Mark Cameron was on the committee, the last committee, and has very detailed knowledge of all of this. So I'm just wondering, on what basis are you pushing back on that? Because to me, that's a really important element before we even talk about any monies to be spent, is clarity on that. And then, I guess, further down in the informational summary, where you talk about this being a first phase, and then maybe we'll do other stuff in the future. While, the items you've identified are certainly all necessary, I guess I'm not sure if they, I agree with Fran, the roof needs to be done first, but, there's a lot that needs to be done, and in future, future fundings for this, one of the benefits of doing a big project like was, what was proposed last spring was we were able to issue debt, get a debt exclusion. It's out of the operating budget. It doesn't pressure our free cash flows. Our free cash flows are kind of our rainy day fund. So that's, my kind of the methodology of financing this is something that, to me certainly needs to be vetted a little bit more. But those are kind of my two questions. Number one, what's the basis that you're pushing back on the accessibility code and the 30% number, and then how do we actually do the job correctly over time and really rehab the building as it should be?
So 521 CMR is available online for anyone to read. You just have to read the administrative section, which talks about renovations to existing buildings. And it's very clear the items that are exempted from the triggering method to calculate it. It's a code that I'm well familiar with that applies to a number of projects that we do in our firm, and just have to read the code.
So the roof is exempt from that?
Roofing is specifically mentioned as an exempted item.
Sprinkler systems, HVAC, so those are all exempted.
Mechanical systems are exempted, and the brick walk outside it's not even it's exterior work. It's not even considered part of triggering anything.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, your hand was up next.
Thanks. So in terms of the HVAC, has an HVAC engineer looked at what work would be taking place, or are we strictly talking about replacing a piece of equipment that's been in service for over 30 to 40 years and replacing it with a like-in-kind unit?
So if our estimates are accurate, there's about $400,000 left over for the HVAC portion of the four items that we had in our list. We would intend to engage a mechanical engineer to prepare a design, to prepare bid documents, and to do what's called develop a base bid and then add alternates. So that the base bid would be to replace the chiller. Go outside, look up the model number, buy a new one. Have it installed. And then the add alternate items, when those come in on the bids, when you run out of 400,000, you stop. We can do the first three add alternates, and then the fourth one puts us over the 400. So we're not doing that one this year. That's the approach.
But my question is, no one has looked at it to date to understand what performance and what meets current code? I mean, we're in a much different code perspective now. We have a lot more technology. We talked about the heat pumps and how far the heat pumps have come to where we are now at the senior center versus where they are when that building was built just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So to be replacing in kind seems rather irresponsible, if you will, for a lack of a better term, because there's a lot better technology available to us, which then brings up the conversation. It kind of dovetails itself into any architectural layouts inside. I'm trying to understand how if a new HVAC system is implemented into the building, it's going to be implemented into a building with its current architectural layout. So any future renovations down the road that would be changing or modifying partitions interior, there's going to be rework necessary to the HVAC system, where we're going to be redoing the HVAC system, redoing drops to accommodate the new architectural layout. Whereas if we do it in one shot, we're not doing things 2 and 3 and 4 times. In relation to and this is where things like this come into the roof, right? We're talking about a roof replacement right now because we really need to secure the building so we don't continue to lose it. But even that is less than optimal. There's a chimney that's structurally insufficient that should be coming down, and there's vents on the roof that are obsolete, and any other architectural modifications, vents, plumbing stacks, all of those components should be cut into the roof before a new roof goes on. We shouldn't be we shouldn't be replacing a new roof and then deciding 2 years later, let's take the structural deficient chimney down now when we have a brand new roof that we just put on, and now we have to cut into the flashing around. These are some of the things that the devil's in the detail here. And I know that the people on town meeting floor aren't getting into the minutia of understanding these details, but the constant small steps here will just cause this thing to be completely fiscally irresponsible. And I've heard the term, people need to be held accountable, right? And this is, how do we hold people accountable when the select board and these boards and committees and the advisory committee and your group, these groups are constantly turning over, because this is going to be going on for the next 10 years. So how is there going to be any consistency of the message and the renovation that's planned? It seems that this long drawn out process would be, I guess, a better term, willy-nilly. I mean, it's like who's on deck that minute and who feels what's important to them. It doesn't have a cohesive vision for what the building really needs. It seems more of a firefighting expedition.
Is there a question you want me to answer?
Well, I mean, again, I don't understand how. I mean, I'm trying to understand how your plan go forth for the years to come and eliminates this rework. How do you combat this rework? How do you anticipate the changing codes that are going to come in the forthcoming years? But how is that going to be part of this?
So the new energy code is not triggered by the work that we're planning to do. Replacing a chiller that's not working anymore will provide air conditioning to the square footage of the 1987 wing. And if walls get moved down in the future to combine 2 rooms together to make one bigger room, you rework you don't change the capacity of the air conditioning. The air conditioning is based on the volume of space and the orientation of the sun and energy leaking through the perimeter. That doesn't change. You just simply reconfigure the ductwork, and that would be part of the cost of that project. But we're not asking for any walls to be moved right now. If walls need to be moved in the future, then the sheet metal work necessary to reconfigure the ducts to serve the new room configuration would be part of that project. But that's not this project. I have to say, we can make excuses about why an idea is bad and then wind up doing nothing. And here we are after 15 years of doing nothing.
Okay, I see that we have some more questions. Rob?
Thanks. In your presentation prior to Mark's question, you referred to we quite a bit. We will do this, we will look at that, we will price out this piece of equipment. When you say we, what's your conception of how this project gets managed? I mean, I assume that, well, you tell me. That's my question. Is this your group? Is it town staff?
So there's a group of about six of us that have met together that have formulated what we think is a reasonable plan to suggest to the town. Obviously, the town has staff that manage projects. They're already paid employees, and these would be projects that they would manage the same way that they manage other projects. Likewise, if we have to hire an OPM, that would become part of the cost of any work.
Okay, so in response to Jean's question about meeting with Mr. Berardi, you said that your group had not met with him. Have you met with any other of the town staff who have responsibility for these areas to discuss your plan?
I know that Clark has had a number of meetings with the building official, Mr. Hallen, to talk about various things. But, you know, he's the town building inspector. He's not the manager of the
Okay,
project.
one last question is, prior to your remarks, the town manager discussed a differing view of how the regulations stack with respect to the requirement that the building be brought into various kinds of compliance, and you've disagreed with that. Is your group prepared to present the town with an opinion of a council that's the case, rather than inviting members of the town to read specific sections of the CMR?
So
That's a yes or no. That's just a yes or no question. Are you going to bring in a lawyer to give us an opinion, or are you just?
well, first of all, the code is not administered by the law. It's administered by licensed design professionals, and we
My
will have.
question was a yes or no question. Are you going to give us an opinion, or have you given us your opinion?
If you would like an additional opinion from a licensed design professional licensed in Massachusetts with respect to interpretation of the code, we will provide that to you.
Thank you.
Fran?
Yeah, I'm concerned, I'm reading a thing, upgrade HVAC system, replace equipment as necessary. You mentioned several times replacing the chiller. Well, you've got an antique chiller which has failed, and now you're probably gonna have to replace the compressor unit and the condensing unit as well. Because
It's a package, yes.
yeah, because we've got all new refrigeration gases now. We can't, this, I imagine it's an R22, and we're gonna have to change that. So this is a, we need some numbers to get some idea what it is, what's the scope for what.
Yeah, this is a $50,000 piece of equipment that will cost $50,000 to install.
That's the entire package,
That's
chiller.
the big unit outside
pumps.
on a pad.
That includes pumps as well.
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
Meg?
Yes, just one question, or really clarification, going back to the 521 question that Rob and a few others have brought up. So I pulled that up, and I'm reading very clearly in 3.3.2, if the work performed, including the exempted work, amounts to 30% or more of the full and fair cash value of the building, the entire building is required to comply. So I guess my question to you is, are you saying that somehow I'm misreading this, and there is in fact a different interpretation of that allows us to not have to comply with 521 for these 4 items?
We will provide you with a formal opinion on that. I will work with Clark and we'll get you one.
Thank you.
Diane?
My question is just sort of follow up, like just drilling down into what this article is really doing for the request for town meeting is funding. So my question, ultimately, the project has to be managed, to Rob's point, by the town. It's not going to be by any architect, that has signed this citizens petition. Basically, if this were to pass town meeting, it would be it would require that the town spend money. I don't know how the motion's going to read, but it would appropriate theoretically $1 million. And so the real question I have is, where's that $1 million coming from? Would that be, it has to come from somewhere. So is it an additional raise? Would it be a debt exclusion? And I would imagine that would come out in the motion. So I don't know if anybody here on this call has that answer. And then secondly, like ultimately, again, you're asking for $1 million so that the town can prioritize these matters that you prioritize. So some of the details of how it would get done and how it would get bid out, it almost will come out of your purview at that point. And it'll be the town's responsibility for trying to get this $1 million to buy us these priority projects. So I guess my real question is, where is this $1 million coming from?
The petition reads that to see if the town hall will raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds and or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute a sum of money. That's the petition.
Right. Which is kind of our standard funding language, but again, it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, how do those other projects get funded?
Well, we usually have to figure that out, right?
I think I wind up paying for it somehow.
Meg, is your hand still up or is it up again?
No, it shouldn't be. It shows as being down on my end. I don't know why it.
And Mark?
Mr. Longley, I don't think any of us disagree with the fact that this work has got to be done, but we just need to know how it's going to be funded, who's going to do, how is it going to affect the town overall? And are there some blind alleys that we're going to lead ourselves up into when we're going to say, oh my goodness, how this happened?
Well, let me say this, that the town wanted to spend $10 million to go to One Pleasant Street without answering the question of what do you do with the vacant town hall, which was probably another $8 million. So somehow or other, that problem was overcome for them for that project. And I think we can probably overcome that problem for $1 million for this year, for this project.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, maybe just to Diane's point, I mean, how it's funded actually does need to be specified, because if you're going to issue debt, it means a certain, certain way of voting on town hall at town meeting. It also means that it has to be voted on at the ballot. So there's a big difference between, yanking it out of free cash, which I would definitely not vote for, because again, that's our rainy day fund. We also don't have, do you have firm cost estimates? You're asking us to give $1 million and we don't really have estimates. And, we can agree to disagree that the project that was presented last spring, might have been expensive, but we had a firm guaranteed cost for that. We knew what the cost was. So we at least were voting, eyes wide open on the amount of money. So there's just too many unanswered questions for me in this, not to mention, hearing Meg read the statute. It doesn't sound like your interpretation of it is the correct one.
I actually was going to say the same thing that Mike started out with, is without firm costs for any of these items, without somebody having gone through and inspected the facilities and looked at what it's going to take to fix the items that are on your list, there are 3 things at the top of that list that the town has already identified as needing to be done. So we don't disagree with that. However, the way to get there is more complex than what your citizens petition adds. So, Mark, do you have another question or comment?
Yeah, my other question was we've been talking about the scope of work that would be earmarked for the first round here. How about the subsequent rounds? Where is there a full picture here of the total scope for the entire project? How many years? I understand the premise of, you know, $1 million a year, but is there a defined scope, or is it just being categorized until we're done, which is very subjective.
Well, our
Can I add-
analysis,
Can I add one more thing before you answer that, because you may be able to answer everything at once, because we do need to wrap this up. I don't know if you and your folks are aware of some of the renovations that have been done in the past in the building that could actually prohibit some of the work that you think is important. There were steel beams put in where there shouldn't be. I don't know if you've walked around inside Town Hall, have you? I'm just
Yes.
curious. Okay, so it's like a rabbit warren of little corridors and you have to walk through people's offices to get to the next apartment. It was not done right. So any decision that we make has to be done right this time. So that's just my comment. But again, we do need to wrap up the discussion. I don't think that your citizens petition is really ready for prime time. I think that we need a little bit more information about, as we stated, actual costs for each of these items based on the conditions that you find in the existing town hall before we go there. We all agree we need a roof. I have sat through more meetings than I care to tell you in the select board's meeting room, which thankfully they don't hold their meetings there anymore, but where it was freezing cold outside and it was 90 degrees inside and all the windows were open and we couldn't shut the heat. So I understand the limitations, but we do need more information.
the $285,000 estimate that the select board is using for the roofing is the same estimate that we used. So there should not be a dispute over that number until, of course, the bids come in and we see what the real number actually is. We have two sprinkler bids, one from two sprinkler cost estimates, one from the 2018 EBI report that we took and doubled. And then there's the sprinkler cost estimate, the portion of the work for the 2021 project that we took. So in other words, we're not making it up. We're using the numbers that were previously estimated and factoring them up. And so we're confident that the sprinkler work should be able to be done less than $300,000. And then that leaves the rest of the project to do as much air conditioning as we can. And if the sprinklering winds up being significantly more, that's a far more important project than doing anything more than just simply replacing the chiller, so that the 1987 wing will have air conditioning this year. The brick walk is about $12,000.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We do appreciate your time. And let us know if you come back, if you want to come back with more information for us, we would be happy to entertain that conversation.
So you're not going to vote?
No, we're not going to vote. We don't have enough to vote on.
Thank you, Jean.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
Everybody in agreement that we weren't ready to vote? I just made that executive decision, sorry.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I think given the fact that the select board is trying to move some of these very same priorities
Exactly.
forward, we just have to wait to hear from them what their proposal is.
Exactly, and stating that we haven't been doing maintenance. I mean, what was the $100,000 for the elevator failure? You know, among other things that we fix every day of the week. And really, I think that some of these people on this committee have not probably walked through and seen the mess that was made in the last renovation in the old part of the building. It's not pretty. We all agree that it needs to be done. That's not even for discussion. Rob?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much conversation this is gonna require further for us to generate a recommendation. I don't want to turn it into more than it is. I think Diane's exactly right. If the select board is coming in with a program of its own to address these issues, that it strikes me as how local government works. I'm baffled by the response that this committee seems to be setting up a parallel procurement apparatus.
Right.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it. So, yeah, I think you're right to postpone it. We'll certainly hear and see, whatever information the group wishes to give us, but, we'll see.
Yeah, no, asking for $1 million is great, except we don't have any backup for it. So, and like you said, there's a parallel path.
Yeah, I don't understand how that is functioning at all.
It just doesn't sound like they've
And there's
been,
no plan for the subsequent $1 million ask that they're proposing in theory, right? There's no, it's a perpetuity here of
Yeah, it's also not clear to me that you can take a project like this and snap it into $1 million pieces and kind of informally project it across 2, 3, 4, 20 years, and then somehow get it within the other. I guess I failed to ask, whether this is consistent with public procurement law.
I was just gonna say those same words.
Yeah, but, that remains to be seen. And if it were to go farther than I think it's gonna go, we'd probably want to hear from, the actual, people who do this for the town, to come in and explain to us what their perspective is. And maybe we should keep that on deck if we think it's an important piece of information for us to know. But that's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're ready to move on. Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so town manager updates, do you have anything other than what we've already discussed, Chris, or a pretty structured agenda for tonight?
As I mentioned, when I was mentioning the one-time cost article, the town did get accepted into this grant program for the management of sewer, which is great. And that's another positive. The town did hire a new public health nurse. Mary Goodman has retired after many years of excellent service. And Joan Taverna joined us this week. She had been the nurse in Weymouth and then in Hull and was their public health director, and now is our public health nurse. So she started. If you find yourself in the building, say hello. She's in Mary Goodman's old office, and there is a celebration for Mary's retirement in May. You can check in with the folks in the first floor office. They're kind of organizing that. So, but if you see her, she's still in town. She and Ronnie aren't leaving. They're still in town, but she's retired. There's a lot of study and analysis going on with town hall, as you saw, and it's the procurement questions. Without getting into this in depth, a memo was sent from my office to the select board, which is actually up on the public website, highlighting some of the CMR 521 issues, which I guess Meg raised. And again, I read it pretty plainly that things are triggered. I mean, it's not that you want them to be; they just are, right? I mean, and you can't ignore this stuff. I mean, when you ignore public procurement processes, you get in a lot of trouble. And I'm really not interested in getting the town in trouble, even if it's well-intentioned trouble. Other than that, we're just plugging along. So Capital meets tomorrow. They should get their stuff wrapped up. As you know, CPC is all wrapped up. So right now we're kind of on track. Are you looking for a report on the zoning articles next week too? I mean, we can have Tom Callahan come in maybe and give you a little spread.
He actually was thinking that he was already scheduled, so it would be great if he could come.
Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, anyone have a question for me on anything?
I don't think so.
Jean,
Okay.
I have a comment / question.
Sure.
Given the few things that we had to defer tonight, which I don't think will take up too much time next week. We're basically slotting some numbers in. We've had the conversations, right? and that we are hoping to hear from Capital next week,
Yes,
right? And we'll be having the schools in front of us next week.
yes.
Would there be any possibility of bumping zoning till after the warrant closed?
To the 8th?
Yeah, I just,
I
I'm,
actually was thinking that in order to give them enough time, we might need to do that.
I tend to agree.
I mean,
Um,
Rob, you're the most well-versed in this at this point. I've noticed you haven't sent me an email telling me when to come watch something with you, so.
no. I plowed through them because I wanted to try and figure out what was going on and to hear the discussion. And I did do kind of clips in case anyone wants to kind of get acquainted with the specific
There were a
conversations.
lot of clips, thank you.
There were a lot of clips.
Thank you for doing that.
But
Yes.
it's, I mean, it's important stuff. It raises a lot of questions. I think some of the biggest questions seem to have been withdrawn. I mean, in this, Chris mentioned that the FAR is not going to go to town meeting, and there are a couple of other provisions that are not going to go to town meeting. And some of what is going to town meeting is really very straightforward. One of the articles is just reorganizing the numbering without changing any words. That's easy. I think the MBTA implementation of the MBTA statute is interesting and it seems to be attracting a lot of attention in neighboring towns. And we should get a good briefing on that. We should give a thoughtful response. Some of the other ones, they're all important and, they all touch and concern what people can do with land. But it seems that the ones that would have been really controversial and complicated may have been migrating out. We'll see. I think probably given everything that you just cited for next week, school budget and capital and everything else, I would, with respect, to Tom and his schedule, I would rather give him more time.
Right. No, I
And
agree.
get the final refined project. So I'd be perfectly fine with what that would be off on the 8th.
May 8th.
Yeah. That works better for me too. So
Okay, so I'll make a note of that so we can change it. So just to recap, we voted the budget recommendations for police, fire, and DPW tonight. We have a few things that we're going to hold because we don't have final numbers, and we're putting Article 6 supplemental appropriation for fiscal 2024 on the May 1st agenda. We did vote Article 7 stabilization, Article 9 funds for one-time cost, Article 10 department revolving funds. You can check these off on your agenda. We're postponed the revolving fund for the library programs and specialized inspections. When do you think that might be ready, Chris? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I was thinking 3 different things at the same time.
Oh, that's okay. We postponed the revolving fund for the library programs. When do you think we might have the
Oh,
information?
you can have all those next week. I'm planning to have
Okay,
you
great.
everything next week, everything that I
Okay,
can, everything that's not zoning, you can have next week. Or you
okay.
can have this week for next week.
All right, so we recommended Article 12, 13,
You recommended articles
14.
9. What did I say?
Yeah, I already went through those.
7, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 14.
And 14, right.
And the other thing is, when are we gonna have CPC come talk to us?
Tom's ready for next week. That's fairly simple.
Okay,
Oh, wait,
Yeah, it's a fairly simple one.
next week, Chris?
Can you? I mean, it would be great if you could.
Well, if we're not gonna do the zoning thing, then, and it's that simple, then we could do that next week.
Yeah, they have, I think, for 4 or 5 projects, but nothing big and complicated. They had a pretty tame process.
Okay.
The one thing I will ask, if anyone has anyone, we're doing that, we have that consolidated article at the beginning, the recognition and remembrance.
Yeah.
If there's anyone that you know of who was a longtime participant in town, obviously we know about Russell Benny will most certainly be mentioned in that article. If anyone's passed away that may have worked in the past, and if you want to just forward any names and any kind of service they did, it'd be great. We're trying to compile that. And if there's anyone else, who's hit a milestone in particular, maybe someone served on committee for 50 years or something like that, I'm not saying that, I don't know. So if you want any of that you want to help us with on Article 1 would be great. Other than that, I think,
In Article 24, the citizens petition for the plastic water balls, we said we'd put that on the next meeting agenda, but we need to make sure that somebody from that group or some representatives from that group can participate.
do you have a liaison? So one of you reached out to Mr. Longley. I didn't do that. So
Me,
did someone reach out to Mr. Longley? Because I didn't schedule. So if one of you are able, we have on this petition, it's the first name, and I don't remember. It's Adam. Again, I don't have the warrant in front of me. My office has the contact information for that group.
It's Adam Norman. I'm happy to do
Norman.
that, Jean. I can reach out to him.
all right.
And
do
I
you
think
know
he'd be
him?
more than happy to get you all the materials you want in advance. And again, this is something that already happened in Hingham, so it's not coming out of thin air. So
Right. Do you know him, Mary?
I do not, but if somebody can share his contact info, Chris.
my office has it. If someone just wants to reach out to Tracy tomorrow, she can get it to you.
Okay.
And it's he's also on the Open Space and Recreation Commission, I think. So
All right. I'll see if I can find him on the town website. If not,
Yep.
I'll talk to
yeah, but
Tracy.
I know that Tracy has his contact information because she's been working with them. I met with them before, and we've been working with them on the getting the language in the warrant. So I'll check.
And I noticed Katie Dunn's on that committee, and she did the plastic bag bans.
Right.
She's probably
Yeah.
a very good source of information for them.
That'd be good. Diane?
Yeah, just a quick question on that citizens petition, since there are a couple members of the Open Space and Rec Commission that are proponents of this citizens petition. Was it something that did they try to get it through to the select board, or they decided to just do it on their own?
They're doing they did on their own. They did come to select board, but they went on their own.
Okay.
They came in last fall, and then
Right.
yeah, I'm trying to. I think here I'm going to send you Mary. I don't know if his phone number is in there, but his email's here. I'm going to forward an email he sent to me.
Perfect.
for
Thank you.
January. I'll do that right now.
Okay, so we're kind of on time, kind of. So we have a set of minutes to approve from the last meeting on April 3rd that you received. And I would accept a motion to approve those minutes. If we're all set.
So moved.
Diane, do you have a question? I can't hear you.
I'm just looking for them. Just trying.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mary, you moved it? Could I have a second?
Second,
Who was that? I'm sorry, I wasn't looking.
Mark.
Mark, okay. Okay, and we need a roll call vote to approve them. So Mike Barclay,
Abstain, I wasn't there.
okay. Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron.
aye.
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Abstain, I was among the missing as well.
Right. right. Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
I need to abstain as well.
okay. Meg Wheeler,
Meg Wheeler, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay, so those are approved.
It was such a boring meeting without you all.
It was.
Is that the meeting with the bat or no, or the bird?
The bird meeting?
Oh my God, that was hysterical. Anyway, moving right along, schedule of upcoming meetings. So now we have 5-1 and we also have 5-8.
Yep.
Since we're going to do zoning then. Topics not reasonably anticipated. I don't have any. So somebody could make their favorite motion.
If I could just go back, I did check in with Nick already on our emergency money that was deployed for the Paul Pratt Library, and sounds like that has worked out so good so far on the drainage issue, and they've been able to do their masonry and temporary support out front. So
That's great. Good to know.
And I will double check with Jean. I know that Lance is not available next Wednesday. I think he's traveling, but I think we'll probably have Patrick and Susan, and he had mentioned for having Ted Carr come join the meeting. So I'll just confirm that and I'll send you a note.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other comments?
The electric bus is coming, by the way, or it's come, so there's actually a little ribbon cutting for it on Friday over
Oh,
at the middle high school, so, I think it's scheduled for around noon, so. If you
Nice.
find yourself in the neighborhood, feel free to see the brand new electric bus.
it is here.
It's here. And
Very
a charging
good.
station too, I think. I think that's been at level 3. I think it's been installed. So
The charging station? Where is that?
I
The
believe
charging?
that's up at the current facility. It's relocated.
No,
It's relocatable. It's relocatable.
good. That's a good thing.
And the word is it's going to be bus route number 6. The word on the street for
Ooh,
anybody on that route.
I don't know what that means, but
It's not on my route, so.
I think I think we were on bus 6. Oh, well, that was a long time ago. What can I say?
Kudos to Tanya Bodell and her group for
Yep.
pushing this thing forward.
Yep. Okay, so I would love a motion to adjourn if
So
everybody.
moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, Mary and Mark, is that a,
Sure, yeah, second. I'll take the second.
okay. Okay, so roll call, Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Rob Hillman,
Aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Meg Wheeler, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Thank you very much.
Good
And
night.
we'll see you next week and
guys.
hopefully